Joined here by Brittany Ghiroli of MLB.com. And if you're Matt Wieters, you probably can't wait to get out of Sarasota. We're told by players who are on the disabled list that have to go to Sarasota, where it's a wonderful facility, by the way, but you're kind of on an island. And for Matt, he's been on that island the entire year. So this sounds like a positive step that he's going to rejoin the team and possibly maybe by next week even go on a rehab.
Yeah, I think if you're Matt Wieters, you're a little bit excited, Jim. I mean, obviously, he's a little tired of being in Sarasota. I get sick of Sarasota. We're only there for 7 weeks for spring training. Matt Wieters has yet to play a game, as you mentioned. He hasn't played in almost a year. So when you look at really a year since that surgery date, it probably goes back a little further because of what he was dealing with early on, April and May. It might be a little bit over a year when he's actually set foot last on the field. He's dying to get back in. He's still on that every other day schedule, though, which concerns me because the Orioles are planning to bring him up, not have him catch every day, which shows that he's a little further away than I think they initially anticipated he would be at that 1 year mark. I think they hoped he'd be an everyday guy in June. I think if you had asked them when this surgery started, certainly this spring when optimism was high that he'd maybe be there for opening day, they thought that Matt Wieters could be their everyday guy. Now we're not so sure. He could catch 3 to 4 days a week. Obviously, Caleb Joseph has done a really nice job, so it's not a terrible situation to be in, but this team feels like they are better with Matt Wieters 3 days a week than they are with Matt Wieters 0 days a week. So they're going to have him come up. He's going to do some stuff in Miami. He's going to hopefully play every other day, starting with Tuesday in AA Bowie, and then they'll go from there. But they hope to get something out of Matt Wieters. Keep in mind, this is the last year he could be an Oriole. He's a free agent after this year. They got to try and get everything they can out of him and hope that maybe he's a shot in the arm for this club.
Well, and the thing with Matt is it was admirable that his goal was opening day this year. Remember last year when they shut him down first, then he had the surgery. That was what the goal was. But as Buck Showalter reminded us this morning during his pregame press briefing, with Tommy John surgery, you don't know. Some come back in 9 months, some it's 10, some it's 15 months, which they're hoping this isn't the case. The 1 year anniversary, as Britt said, comes up next month. So the key is not just to get him back, but to get him back and to be effective and efficient and hopefully not have a setback that sends him back to Sarasota.
Right, that's obviously what you don't want to happen, but I agree. I mean, you really don't know a whole lot, especially with catchers. There's not a whole lot of precedent. You look at the history, especially guys of Wieters' caliber, you just don't know how they're going to react. And again, I feel like them trying to test that arm March 17th when he made that spring training start, and Buck was asked about this today, how much of a setback was it? Buck really wouldn't go there. He doesn't like to say the S word when it comes to setbacks and Matt Wieters, but clearly it was a case where he was, pushed along a little too much. The elbow didn't respond well, and he had to get shut down. So they thought maybe he'd be ready early. Now it turns out, even at the year mark, they're going to have to kind of wait and see and go really off of how Matt Wieters is feeling. This is uncharted territory for Matt, uncharted territory for the Orioles. They're going to try and be cautious and try and get as much as they can out of him.
Well, Matt was tested in that game. It was his only spring training appearance. It was March 17th, and there was a dribbler hit out in front of the plate, remember? And he did make a good throw to first base. The runner beat it out for an infield hit, but it was the next day that the inflammation creeped up, and Matt has been working his way back ever since. Now, in the meantime, the Orioles are in pretty good shape because Caleb Joseph has done an outstanding job. He came up last year, really worked his way into the #1 spot, and this year he's made the majority of the starts, and he's done very well. Here's his offensive numbers for Caleb on the year.
He really has, and it's funny because as a prospect, they always thought that he could hit. The issue was him not being able to catch. I mean, defensively, you had scouts tell you over and over again, this guy is not going to be a major league catcher. You got to find a position for him. And it ended up last year being the opposite. He couldn't really offensively get things going, but it didn't matter. He still gave them the defense, and that's the most important thing. And even when you ask Caleb, like we did last night, about getting some hits, about offensively turning the corner, the first thing he says is, well, I was glad that Wei Yin Chen got through 7. He knows where his bread and butter is. He knows that the second his defense goes, Orioles manager Buck Showalter is going to want to make some changes. So he knows that defense comes first. Offense obviously has been very helpful, particularly because he's in the bottom of the order, and it really creates a very deep lineup for the Orioles when they've got guys like Diaza and Caleb Joseph hitting. But Caleb Joseph, the way he's responded, the way the pitchers enjoy throwing to him, that's what's going to keep him up here. That's what's going to help the Orioles feel good about having Matt Wieters only a couple times a week.
And it doesn't seem as if when Matt comes back that he will DH the days he doesn't catch. Buck was asked that yesterday, and he flat out said, no, I don't have any plans right now. Now that could change because we know what a hitter Matt Wieters is, but that creates a little bit of a glut as well, because unless Jimmy Paredes goes and plays second base,
right,
that means Paredes has to be the DH. So all of a sudden now you have too many players for fewer spots.
Yeah, and Jimmy Paredes, you can't sit the guy right now. I mean, he's just completely on fire, Jim. There's a reason that the players have been calling him Babe Ruth since spring training started, you know. So you can't sit Jimmy Paredes. So it's going to be interesting to see how Matt Wieters is when he comes back. I mean, he's had probably about 300 at-bats at extended spring. He's been down there forever. But extended spring is a lot different than facing the Seattle Mariners, than the Red Sox, than the Yankees. There's going to be an adjustment period, and Matt Wieters did not look good in the Grapefruit League during his at-bats. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares up here offensively, because that hasn't really been the issue. The elbow has always responded pretty well to him hitting, but he just didn't have the numbers, at least in spring training.
Yeah, now let's remember the players that are at extended spring training. It is injured players trying to get back, and it's minor league players who are not assigned to a full season affiliate. They're trying to get known and be shown so they can get assigned to a team. So as Buck said today, Matt's been doing a lot of swinging and a lot of ducking
exactly,
as those fastballs come high and tight. Now, we mentioned there are 7 players on the Major League DL, and here's the list. Jason Garcia, actually 8, I forgot about Jason Garcia. Garcia, Gosman, Norris, and Wesley Wright, so 4 pitchers on the DL. Then there's Wieters, we just spoke about, Everth Cabrera, Ryan Flaherty, and Jonathan Scope. A glut of players coming back, and it looks as if the first off this list to come back is Everth Cabrera, and that may be as soon as tomorrow.
Yes, it could. And looking at that list, Jim, you could almost have an all-DL team for the Orioles. 8 players, it's almost enough to field a starting lineup. But they do expect Everth Cabrera, which of course means Ray Navarro is probably the guy to go. He's got options. He's a guy who they're able to send down to AAA without losing him to waivers. So Cabrera can play second base, can play shortstop, can do some things speed-wise that they don't really have right now. And he's struggled in moments. I think he's a guy who maybe gets a little overexposed when he's forced into that everyday role. But they still feel like he's a upgrade over Ray Navarro. So that's what I expect to happen tomorrow.
Do you see any kind of a transformation for the roster coming anytime soon? When you look at that list, and first of all, there are too many players for spots. How are they going to get all these guys on the 25-man? Dan Duquette certainly has a dilemma there. But the other thing about it, Britt, if you looked at last night's game, the bench had 3 outfielders and Ryan LaVarnway. Very little maneuverability for Buck Showalter with that kind of a bench. How do they get more balance, and might that be coming sooner than later?
I think it has to. I mean, they've been really lucky. They don't have a very optionable roster, and they didn't to break camp.
Right.
But they've managed to make roster moves because they've had so many injuries, which isn't the way that you want it to happen, Jim, but it certainly helped them to get guys like Mike Wright and Tyler Wilson up here, and to be able to hold on to Jason Garcia, who I don't know how they're going to be able to hold on to him much longer once they start making some of these roster moves. But I think they're going to have to kind of see how this shakes out. They got to add Bud Norris at some point next week. Ryan Flaherty could be available next week. So a lot is going to happen for this Orioles team. There's going to be a lot for us to write about, a lot for you to talk about, Jim. But they're going to have to find a way to keep that flexibility because it's a long season. Everybody in the rotation is going to go through bad patches. They're going to have to be able to call up a guy like Kevin Gossman or Mike Wright again or a Tyler Wilson, and they couldn't do that the way that opening day roster was constructed. So look for Dan Duquette and Buck Showalter, who are so inventive and find these loopholes to find more of them and continue to try and keep that depth and also keep a lot of options down below.
Right, and we don't know what the roster will look like tomorrow depending on what happens here. Chris Tillman may not be able to come back. He pitched 3 innings, but the rain continues to fall, though very lightly. We expect we're going to resume, but if Tillman can't come back, it becomes a bullpen game. And if you have options in the bullpen, you may be sent out to get fresh arms for the weekend in Miami. The Orioles don't have a day off coming up for quite some time. Britt, appreciate the visit.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Thanks for stopping by.